Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the day soften around you and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: Evening Above the City. The evening begins slowly over Athens. This is not one evening preserved in a written account, nor a single sunset that can be precisely named and dated. It is an imagined hour, carefully assembled from buildings, landscapes, ordinary objects, and traces left in the earth. It is a plausible evening sometime between about 400 and 350 BCE, when the great 5th century monuments of the Acropolis were already complete, and familiar generations of Athenians had lived beneath them. From a hillside beyond the crowded streets, the city seems to gather around a high center of stone. The Acropolis rises sharply above the lower ground, a steep outcrop of pale limestone whose cliffs still catch the light. Temples and sacred buildings crown its summit. Near the western approach stands the Propylaea, the monumental entrance through which visitors pass into the sacred precinct above. From below, these structures appear calm and enduring. Their measured lines rest high over a city that is far less regular. The sun has not yet disappeared. It hangs low toward the western hills, while the sky softens from clear blue to muted gold. Light travels across columns, tiled roofs, bare patches of ground, and the narrow spaces between houses. On Pentelic marble, quarried from Mount Pentelicon to the northeast, the low sunlight reveals a gentle warmth, almost like honey held beneath the pale stone. Yet Athens is not a uniformly white city. That impression belongs more readily to weathered ruins than to a living place. Here marble monuments rise among humbler materials. There are walls of mud brick and plaster, timber beams, limestone foundations, and roofs covered with reddish terracotta tiles. Sacred buildings and carved details may carry paint. Plaster bears the stains of weather and smoke. Wood darkens with age. Roof tiles vary from orange-brown to dusty red, shaped by their clay, their firing, and their many seasons beneath the Attic sun. Below the Acropolis, ordinary houses are generally low, closely packed, and visually plain. Their outer walls reveal little of the life within. A doorway may open briefly onto a narrow passage or a private courtyard, offering only a momentary glimpse before it closes again. From this hillside, the houses form an uneven field of walls and roofs, fitted together along slopes and winding lanes. Athens has grown gradually, rather than according to one tidy design. Old roads bend around exposed rock and long-established property lines. Paths pass shrines that may be older than nearby homes. Walls follow the changing shape of the ground. A lane narrows where one building presses forward, then opens again near a well, a small clearing, or the meeting of several roads. Central Athens is not arranged on a neat grid. It is accumulated over generations, adapting to the hills, to older routes, and to the needs of those who live and work there. Terracotta roof tiles cover many buildings, although the roofs are not all alike. Their forms vary with date, wealth, and purpose. Some have been carefully laid and kept in good repair. Others have been mended one section at a time, leaving subtle changes of color across their surfaces. Along the roof edges, the final sunlight rests in thin bands before slowly fading. Beyond the city, the land of Attica stretches beneath the evening sky. It is a relatively dry landscape, marked by exposed rock, pale soil, olive trees, low scrub, and cultivated ground wherever the soil and water allow. The olive trees do not form a dense forest. They stand with space between them, their narrow leaves turning from deep green to silver whenever the breeze moves through the branches. Dust lies over the roads. During the busy hours of the day, it has risen beneath sandals, turning wheels, and the hooves of animals. Now it begins to settle. The air still carries the stored warmth of afternoon, but the stone is slowly releasing its heat. On shaded slopes and within narrow streets, the first coolness has already arrived. It gathers beside walls and under roof lines. It settles in hollows of rock. It moves quietly through the city, almost unnoticed. Below and west of the Acropolis lies the Agora, the civic and commercial heart of Athens. From this height, its position can be understood without every structure being clearly seen. It is an open area among stoas, public buildings, monuments, workshops, and roads. During the day, it is shaped by buying and selling, public duties, conversation, worship, and countless ordinary crossings from one part of the city to another. Not far away rises the rocky Areopagus. Its exposed stone catches the declining sunlight differently from plaster, marble, or tile, holding a muted glow along its ridges. Farther west stands the Pnyx, where the citizen assembly meets. In daylight, these places may carry the movement and voices of civic life. At this hour, they begin to return to the softer forms of the surrounding landscape. The evidence for public places such as these is relatively strong. Foundations, inscriptions, architectural fragments, and written descriptions allow much to be understood. The quieter details of ordinary houses are less complete. Mud brick may gradually dissolve. Timber decays, burns, or is reused. Household objects sometimes survive, but they rarely tell us exactly who held them on a particular evening, or what was said as a lamp was lit and a door was closed. And so this scene remains careful and modest. It does not claim to restore every voice, every roof, or every point of lamplight. It follows what the surviving evidence makes likely, while leaving room for uncertainty in the gathering shadows. The sun lowers a little farther, and those shadows lengthen. The Acropolis remains bright for a few moments longer than the streets below. Its height allows the temples to receive the last direct rays, while the lower city turns to quieter shades of brown and gray. Columns that seemed sharply defined at midday now appear softened by the warmer light. The Propylaea stands partly in brightness and partly in shade, as though evening were crossing its entrance, one slow step at a time. There is no need for a brilliant moon tonight. Moonlight here, as in any age, depends upon the weather and the changing phase of the moon. Perhaps a modest crescent will become visible later. For now, the remaining daylight is enough. It gathers along western walls, beneath the edges of roofs, and across the dusty roads descending toward the lower city. As the light diminishes, distant sounds become clearer. Somewhere below, a donkey moves at an unhurried pace. Its hooves make a patient, uneven rhythm over packed earth and occasional patches of stone. The sound passes between walls, fades for a moment, and then returns. A wooden door closes with a low knock. From within a courtyard comes the brief scrape of a jar being shifted across the ground. Voices remain in the air, though at this distance they have no distinct words. They rise gently, overlap, and disappear again behind the close arrangement of houses. A bird settles along a roofline. Another crosses the open air above the agora, a small dark shape moving through the last gold of the sky. Near the scrub beyond the outer streets, insects begin their steady evening calls. The breeze changes. It carries the dry scent of earth and olive leaves, along with a faint thread of smoke. Cooking fires are being tended in some households. In others, small lamps will soon be lit with olive oil. Their flames will be modest and local, illuminating a room, a low table, or the face of someone seated nearby. Athens will not blaze against the night. Its light will gather in scattered points, sheltered by walls and courtyards. One flame may glow in a doorway, another behind a plastered wall, and another beside the household work that must be finished before rest. For a little longer, the view remains broad and still. The Acropolis stands above the clustered roofs. The Agora lies below and to the west. The Areopagus and the Pnyx rise as darker shapes against the declining sky. Roads lead outward into the dry Attic countryside, passing cultivated fields, olive trees, exposed limestone, and low vegetation. Near and far, warmth leaves the stone by degrees. The brighter colors withdraw from the ordinary walls first. Reddish tiles deepen into brown, pale dust turns gray. Small hollows among the rocks fill with shadow. High above, the marble retains a final trace of the sunset, warm and quiet, before it too begins to fade. Then one sound separates itself from the others. It is a measured tapping from somewhere in the lower streets. Perhaps it is metal against a tool, or a small hammer completing the final task of the day. After a pause, it comes again. Farther away, another workshop seems to answer more faintly. A piece of wood scrapes across a surface. An object is lifted and set down. Tools are gathered, materials covered, and the disorder of a working day is slowly brought into readiness for the night. The temples above remain in the last of the light, but the clearest signs of human activity now rise from below. They come from artisans smoothing an edge, checking a vessel, cleaning a tool, and preparing to close their workspaces. The wide landscape has grown quiet enough for each small sound to find its way uphill, and so, leaving the broad view behind, The path turns gently downward toward the measured tapping of the workshops. Chapter 2. The workshops begin to close. The measured tapping continues as the path descends toward the lower streets. Between the plain walls of houses, the sound grows clearer, though it never becomes loud. A small hammer meets a piece of metal, pauses, and meets it once more. Then comes silence, followed by the soft scrape of something being moved across a wooden bench. Here, near the western side of the Agora, craft work has filled much of the day. Archaeologists have found traces in and around the Agora connected with metalworkers, potters, makers of terracotta figures, sculptors, and cobblers. Yet the crafts of Athens were not arranged into perfectly separate districts. Workplaces could be scattered among houses, courtyards, shops, storerooms, and public paths. One craft might leave its signs beside another, while many kinds of labor have left almost no visible trace at all. An Athenian might call a place of work an ergasterion. The word broadly meant a workplace, though the same space could also function as a shop. There need not be a firm boundary between making an object, storing it, selling it, and living beside it. A room opening toward the street might contain a workbench and a few finished goods. Behind it, a courtyard could provide light and air for further tasks. Beyond that might be a storeroom, a cooking place, or other rooms used by the household. Work, trade, storage, and domestic life often shared the same walls. At one doorway, the last warmth of metalworking reaches the street. The forge is modest, no great industrial furnace, but a contained place of charcoal, tools, soot, and practiced attention. Now the working day is ending, and the fire must be carefully controlled. A forge cannot simply be abandoned while it is still burning. The coals are banked or allowed to diminish under a watchful eye. Their brighter orange settles slowly into a muted red. Nearby, worked metal retains a little warmth. A worker wipes a hammerhead with a cloth. Another tool receives a light coating of oil. Tongs are placed together rather than tossed aside, and small pieces of metal are collected from the bench. Dust and flakes are swept from the working area. Each movement is quiet and familiar, wiping, sorting, stacking, covering. Those who performed these tasks came from different parts of Athenian society. A workshop might include citizens, relatives, hired workers, resident foreigners, and enslaved people. Resident foreigners were known as medics. They lived and worked in Athens without possessing the full civic status of citizens, and they formed an important part of the city's working population. Ownership and labor could be arranged in many ways. A citizen might own a workshop without personally completing every task. A skilled medic, a hired worker, or an enslaved craftsperson might hold years of practical knowledge in steady hands. Relatives might work together within the household. No single arrangement describes every place of work. Most workshops were small by the standards of later industry, although their size and ownership varied. Some may have consisted of only a few people working in a room or courtyard. Others brought together a larger group. From the street, however, even a busy workplace could appear quite modest. An open doorway, a shaded interior, a bench, a few tools, and materials waiting near the wall. Above the western side of the Agora stands the temple of Hephaestus and Athena. These deities were associated with fire, metalwork, and skilled crafts. Its columns hold the last pale evening light, while the forge below grows dimmer. Temple and workshop occupy very different scales, yet both belong to a city that understood how much knowledge could rest in the hand, how firmly to grip, how carefully to guide a tool, and how lightly to make the final strike. Farther along, another doorway carries the earthy scent of leather. A cobbler has worked here through the afternoon. Near the Agora, an ancient building known as the House of Simon has sometimes been associated with a cobbler, but the identification remains uncertain. Like many details recovered from ancient streets, it offers a possibility rather than a complete answer. In this imagined workshop, pieces of leather are gathered from the floor and bench. Thread is wound and placed aside. Knives are wiped. Wooden pegs are collected into a small container. Larger pieces of leather are stacked where they can be protected from dust, and finished goods are moved into a secure room away from the street. Leather survives poorly across long centuries. The same is true of wood, fibers, thread, and cloth. Because these perishable materials often disappear, the archaeological record gives only an incomplete picture of workshop life. Pottery, stone, and metal may remain, while the softer objects once held, cut, folded, and worn have faded away. Still, the closing motions are easy to imagine. A loose thread is gathered, a knife is cleaned, a piece of leather is folded, a sandal is lifted from the bench and carried indoors. There is no bright glass display window between worker and customer. The opening toward the street is simpler, perhaps a doorway or a broad entrance, with wooden shutters or doors where the building has them. During the day, someone seeking a pair of sandals might have stood close to the work, looking at the material and speaking directly with the maker or seller. Now the opening is closed, and the wooden panel settles into place with a low, hollow sound. Nearby, a carpenter sweeps pale curls of wood away from a bench. Classical images show carpenters at work, along with shoemakers, potters, vase painters, sculptors, and armor makers. Such images cannot show every ordinary detail, yet they preserve glimpses of tools, posture, and practiced movement. The carpenter gathers wooden pegs, knives, and other tools. Shavings form a soft mound before the broom. Smaller pieces of wood are stacked, rather than left underfoot. A cloth is spread over unfinished work, keeping some of the street dust from settling across its surface during the night. The scent here is dry and mild, mixed with soot from the forge and the faint earthiness of leather. For a moment, the different workshops seem to breathe into the same evening air. In another courtyard, a sculptor's tools are being placed near a wall. Fine dust lies around the working area. Elsewhere, a terracotta worker covers prepared material, and an armor maker checks the bench before stepping away. None of these crafts needs to occupy a sharply separate quarter. Their work may appear side by side with household rooms, storage spaces, and the entrances of neighboring homes. The workshops do not all close at one appointed hour. There are no standardized opening or closing times shared across the city. One worker stops when the fading light is no longer useful. Another continues a little longer beside an oil lamp. A household may pause for its evening meal while a final object remains on the bench. Someone completes one last task. Someone else leaves tomorrow's work exactly where it rests. The sounds thin by degrees. A broom passes over packed earth. A jar receives its lid. A bundle of fiber is lifted from a stool. A tool is wiped and placed beside another. A door turns on its fittings. Within one courtyard, relatives and workers carry materials into a storeroom, while another person clears a space that will soon return to household use. The place of labor becomes, little by little, a place for the evening. The shift is gentle because work and home were never entirely separate here. A room that served customers during the day might become quieter after dark. A courtyard used for practical tasks might soon hold a household gathering. A bench might stand beside an amphora, while finished goods share a room with stored supplies. Behind the closing doors, the distinctions between workshop, shop, storeroom, and household remain fluid. The day's work is folded into the building, into its rooms and thresholds, and into the hands that sweep the floor and cover the materials. The forge gives off one final breath of fading warmth. Its orange glow dims to red, then darkens further. Metal cools in the evening air. Leather scraps have been collected, wooden pegs gathered, shavings swept aside, and shutters drawn across a few street-facing rooms. The tapping has stopped now. In its place comes the quiet sound of a cloth passing over a bench, followed by footsteps crossing a courtyard. Somewhere farther along, an object is lifted with care and set down among others. The movement is slow and deliberate, as though the work cannot be hurried, even at the end of the day. A fine dust remains suspended in the fading light. It lies along a threshold and colors the edge of a worker's hand. Unlike the dark soot near the forge or the pale shavings near the carpenter's bench, this dust is softly red. It is clay dust. Following that faint red trace, the path turns toward another workshop, where shaped vessels wait in rows, and where not every task can end with sunset. Chapter 3. Clay, Kilns, and Quiet Hands. The faint red dust leads through an open doorway and into a pottery workshop, where evening has not quite brought the work to an end. The floor is hard-packed earth, marked by sandals and scattered with pale fragments of dried clay. Low shelves hold bowls, cups, jars, and small oil lamps at different stages of completion. Some are still damp and soft. Others have dried to a lighter shade and are firm enough to be handled. A few finished vessels, already fired, carry the warm orange-red color for which the clay of Attica is known. That color begins in the earth beneath and around Athens. Attic clay is rich in iron, and when it passes through the carefully managed heat of a kiln, the iron helps give the pottery its familiar red appearance. But clay taken directly from the ground is not yet ready for shaping. It may contain pebbles, roots, coarse grains, and other unwanted material. It must be gathered and refined, often with water, so that the finer clay can be separated from heavier pieces. In one corner of the workshop, a covered supply of prepared clay waits for another day. The covering keeps it from drying too quickly. Earlier hands pressed and kneaded it, making its texture even and working out troublesome pockets of air. Push, fold, turn, and push again. The movement is simple and steady. Good preparation makes the clay easier to shape and gives the finished vessel a better chance of surviving the kiln, where heat will test every joint and hidden weakness. Near the center of the room stands the potter's wheel. Its precise form and method of turning may have varied, and the evidence does not tell us exactly how every wheel in classical Athens was worked. There is no motor, only human effort, perhaps supplied by the potter or by an assistant. However the turning is maintained, the wheel allows a lump of clay to revolve beneath wet hands. One last vessel is being finished now. The wheel moves more slowly than it did earlier in the day. A potter sits close, leaning forward without hurry. The clay has already been centered, balanced around the middle of the turning surface. With one hand inside and the other outside, the potter guides the wall of a small cup. The fingers rise together, lifting and thinning the clay. A little water keeps it workable, but not so much that the sides begin to sag. The wheel turns, the hands remain calm. Between motion and touch, the cup becomes even. No spoken measurement is needed. Long practice has taught the fingers what thickness feels right. The rim is smoothed. Gentle pressure gives the body its final curve. Then the wheel slows until the cup seems almost still, though a faint sheen of water remains upon its surface. A cord, wire, or slender tool can pass beneath the base, separating the damp vessel from the wheel. Yet the cup is not ready for the kiln. Freshly shaped clay holds too much water and bends too easily. It must stand and dry until it becomes firm enough to handle. If it were placed immediately into a hot kiln, it could crack or break. Pottery requires waiting as surely as it requires skill. The cup is lifted onto a board beside several others. Some will remain plain, intended for ordinary use. Athens produces many practical vessels: bowls, storage jars, cooking pots, drinking cups, pitchers, and lamps. Other pieces will receive a dark surface of fine clay slip, creating what is often called black gloss after firing. Elaborately painted vases form only one part of this much larger world of pottery. In many households, plain and black glazed vessels are the familiar companions of meals, storage, cooking, and household work. Farther along the shelf, several vessels have dried enough for additional parts to be attached. A handle cannot always be joined while the vessel is very wet, because the soft wall might lose its shape. Instead, the body and the separately formed handle are allowed to stiffen. At the proper moment, the joining surfaces are prepared, moistened with clay mixture, and pressed carefully together. A worker supports a small jar with one hand while fitting a curved handle with the other. The joint is smoothed until the handle appears to rise naturally from the vessel. If the pieces hold very different amounts of moisture, they may shrink unevenly as they dry. The worker must judge not only shape, but timing. Clay remembers impatience. A hurried join may reveal itself later as a crack. Nearby, a painter is finishing for the day. Small containers hold fine clay slip, a liquid mixture made from carefully prepared clay. Slip is not the same as a modern glassy glaze. Through firing, it can create smooth, dark surfaces, fine lines, bands, and broad fields of black. The painter's brush leaves one controlled mark along the side of a cup. Some vessels receive only simple bands or patterns. Others carry leaves, animals, people, or scenes drawn from stories in public life. Not every vase bears a mythological image, and not every pot needs elaborate decoration. Even in a workshop capable of fine painted work, much of the production may be quieter and more practical. On another shelf, a red figure vessel shows how the natural clay itself can become part of the image. The figures remain in the red color of the vessel, while the surrounding areas are covered in slip that will become black. Fine lines suggest folds of cloth and small details of posture. In the black figure method, dark figures stand against the red clay ground. Both effects depend upon the iron-rich clay, the slip, and the careful control of firing. Beyond the main working room stands the kiln, its rounded structure holding the memory of powerful heat. Firing is not simply a matter of lighting a fire and walking away. The vessels must first be thoroughly dry, then they are stacked with care, leaving room for heat and gases to pass among them. They may stand close together, but never thoughtlessly. An unstable stack can shift, and the position of one vessel may affect those around it. The kiln attendant must understand fuel, airflow, heat, and time through long experience. During firing, the atmosphere within the kiln is altered in a deliberate sequence. At first, oxygen circulates freely. Then the kiln is made poor in oxygen, and the changing conditions affect the iron in both clay and slip. Later, oxygen is admitted again. The slipped and unslipped surfaces respond differently, allowing red and black to emerge from related materials on the same vessel. The transformation is quietly remarkable. Clay, fine slip, fire, and changing air work together. On a red figure vessel, the uncovered figures return to the natural red of the clay, while the slipped background remains black. Yet the result requires close attention. Uneven heat, air entering at the wrong time, a flaw in the kiln, or moisture hidden within a vessel may alter what finally emerges. The finished appearance cannot be fully known until firing and cooling are complete. Many hands may share the work. One person prepares clay, another shapes vessels at the wheel, another forms handles, feet, or other joint parts. A painter adds decoration. An experienced attendant watches the kiln. Assistants carry water, fuel, boards, clay, and vessels, learning the order of each task through repetition. A finished cup may pass through all these hands and still bear no name. Now the workers wash in a basin. Red water runs from their fingers and settles into cloudy swirls. Brushes are laid aside. Containers of slip are covered. Damp vessels remain where air can reach them gently, protected from harsh drafts. The wheel has stopped, and its circular surface holds only a thin ring of clay. Beyond the room, the kiln gives off contained warmth. Perhaps it was fired earlier and is now cooling. Perhaps preparations are being made for a later firing. The precise schedule of this workshop cannot be known, just as no single imagined evening can represent every potter in Athens. Still, a firing or cooling kiln may require attention after sunset. Heat, smoke, fuel, and the danger of stray fire make the pottery district quiet but not entirely dormant. An attendant pauses near the kiln, listening and watching. Cooling cannot be hurried. A vessel exposed too quickly to colder air may crack, so the kiln remains closed. Within it, rows of cups, bowls, and jars rest in darkness. Their surfaces are hidden, and their finished colors are still uncertain. Outside, the evening air has cooled. Here the stones remain faintly warm. The attendant lowers the flame of a small oil lamp, and shadows gather around the shelves of drying clay. The newly shaped cup rests among its companions, still soft enough to hold the memory of the potter's fingers. The wheel is motionless now. The brushes are still. Only the kiln keeps its patient warmth. At last, a worker lifts the lamp and walks toward the doorway. Its flame casts a small golden pool across the floor, passing over boards, tools, and the fine red dust along the threshold. Behind it, the kiln holds its silence. Within the darkness, the vessels cool, their final colors still concealed. Then the lamp crosses the threshold. The contained heat of the workshop recedes, and beyond that small circle of light lie the uneven streets of Athens. Chapter 4. Through the Narrow Streets. The lamp passes through the workshop doorway and enters the evening air. Its flame bends in the draught, drawing itself thin and bright before returning to a steady shape. Behind it, the pottery workshop remains warm with the stored heat of the kiln. Ahead, the street is cool, irregular, and almost entirely dark. The person carrying the lamp pauses at the threshold. Sandals settle upon packed earth, where reddish dust has gathered in shallow hollows. Near the wall, small stones and worn fragments of pottery have been pressed into the surface by many passing feet. Athens has no single even covering of pavement across all its streets. Some important routes are broader and more carefully maintained, but many lanes consist of earth, gravel, and layer upon layer of repair. A depression may be filled with rubble, then worn smooth, then filled again in another season. For now, the ground is dry. The long warmth of the day is leaving it slowly. We follow the lamp at an unhurried pace. Its glow reaches only a few steps in each direction, revealing what is near and allowing everything farther away to remain softly concealed. There are no regular street lamps standing at measured intervals, and no broad wash of light opens the way. After sunset, someone wishing to see more clearly may carry a small oil lamp or a torch. The lamp is gentler, though its light is limited. The torch is brighter, but less delicate. Many people know their familiar lanes well enough to move carefully through the darkness, guided by memory, by the outlines of walls, and by the pale strip of sky above. The walls on either side are plain. Their plaster has faded into quiet shades of clay, dust, and pale stone. In places the surface is smooth beneath the fingertips. Elsewhere it has cracked or fallen away, exposing rough masonry underneath. These walls reveal little of the houses behind them. Athenian homes often turn inward, arranging much of domestic life around an open courtyard rather than displaying it toward the street. Broad street-facing windows are not typical here. Privacy begins with the simple outer wall, interrupted only now and then by a doorway. Each doorway is a point of contact between two kinds of space. On one side lies the public lane, on the other is the protected household within. During daylight, news, goods, greetings, and instructions may pass across the threshold. A neighbor may pause there. A visitor may wait. Water, fuel, grain, or materials for household work may be carried through. In the evening, the doorway becomes a narrow frame around lamplight and low voices. One door stands slightly open. From within comes the soft sound of a jar being set down. A line of golden light lies across the threshold and reaches only a short distance into the road. It catches the edge of a sandal and the hem of a garment. The light disappears at once, and the darkness returns without haste. It is not an empty darkness. Shapes remain. There is the pale suggestion of a wall, the deeper recess of a doorway, and the faint line where the roofs meet the sky. Above the houses, a few stars are visible. They seem brighter where the lanes are least illuminated. The city at night is made of small, scattered islands of flame, separated by broad and peaceful stretches of shadow. We continue downhill, where the lane bends around the corner of a house. Streets in central Athens often follow slopes, old boundaries, and routes formed over generations. They are not all straight, and they do not always meet at regular angles. A narrow passage may widen near a junction, then draw close again between adjoining walls. To walk here is to follow the shape of the ground and the long memory of building. Along one side of the lane runs a shallow channel. Earlier in the day, it may have carried rainwater, spilled water, or runoff from nearby households. Now only a little water moves through it, making a faint sound against grit and stone. Athens possesses substantial works of drainage. One of the largest is known today as the Great Drain, carrying water away from important central areas, including the Agora. Smaller channels and drains serve other parts of the city and may connect with larger routes. Yet this infrastructure does not make every lane clean, dry, or evenly maintained. Some streets hold puddles after rain. Channels can become blocked. Edges crumble, and repairs vary from one place to another. Drainage is practical and important, but it is neither complete nor hidden everywhere beneath the ground. The lamp is lifted slightly as we step across the shallow channel. Its glow touches the damp earth. For a moment the moving water reflects a trembling thread of gold. Water reaches the households of Athens in several ways. Some people draw it from wells. Cisterns collect and preserve rainwater. Public fountain houses provide water at places where jars may be filled, while springs and aqueduct systems serve the city in different locations and periods. The source is not the same for every household. Neither is the distance that must be traveled to reach it. Much of the work of fetching water is done by daylight. By evening, many jars have already been carried home, and the voices around the public water sources have faded. The fountain areas are quieter now. Only the occasional step or murmur crosses the open space before settling again. From farther along the lane comes the measured sound of hooves. A mule approaches slowly, led by a man walking close beside it. Two bundles hang across the animal's back, balanced on either side. Donkeys and mules are well suited to carrying goods through streets where larger vehicles may struggle. Carts can enter and cross Athens, especially along broader routes. Yet narrow passages, uneven surfaces, and tight bends restrict the places where wheels can travel easily. Here, the sure pace of a pack animal is better suited to the lane. We stand near the wall to let the mule pass. Its hooves press softly into the dust. One bundle brushes the air with the dry scent of straw. The animal lowers its head, attentive to the uneven ground, while the man murmurs a few quiet words. Then both move beyond the lamp's reach. The hoofbeats continue around a corner. They grow softer, one step at a time, until they dissolve into the sleeping sounds of the city. Nothing follows them. At the foot of a wall, a dog is curled within the shelter of a recessed doorway. As we pass, it lifts its head and shifts one forepaw. Its eyes catch the lamplight briefly. Finding no reason to rise, it settles once more against the cooling plaster. The daytime cicadas have fallen silent. In their place, crickets sound from courtyards, small patches of vegetation, and cracks near the foundations. Their rhythm is quiet and spacious. Other details can be heard. A wooden bar is lowered behind a door. A vessel moves gently across a floor. Sandals scrape over dust, and then become still. Somewhere behind a wall, a lamp flame bends in a draft. At a wider corner, our light reveals a low stone marker. It may mark a boundary, or it may carry a sacred association familiar to those who pass. Elsewhere in Athens, small shrines, altars, boundary stones, and other sacred markers appear among houses, workshops, fountains, and public ways. They do not stand at every corner. Their presence is occasional, woven quietly into the ordinary landscape. The lamp carrier pauses. There is no need for an elaborate ceremony. Only a brief stillness, an acknowledgement shaped by habit, and then the walk continues. The lane begins to climb. The walls draw close again, holding the darkness between them. Here and there, plaster retains a little warmth from the day, though the air has grown cool. The lamp throws each rough patch into relief, then leaves it behind. On higher ground, the outline of the Acropolis rises above the roofs, dark against a sky that holds the faintest trace of evening. From this narrow lane, the individual buildings cannot be clearly distinguished. They gather into one calm silhouette. Below, the inhabited city settles room by room. A final task is completed. A door is secured. A small flame is lowered. Each household keeps its own circle of light, and beyond each circle, the night remains deep and real. There is no crowded flow of nighttime traffic here. Encounters are sparse. A mule has passed. A dog has stirred. A closing door has briefly brightened the dust. Now the lane is quiet again. Ahead, another door opens. Warm light spreads over a worn stone threshold. It reveals shallow marks left by years of feet crossing in and out. Beyond the entrance is a short passage, and farther within, a small open courtyard holds a square of night sky. A lamp rests upon a stand beside the wall. Its flame moves gently in the evening air, illuminating the curved side of a storage jar, a wooden stool, and the edge of a woven basket. The light does not fill the whole house. It gathers only around the nearest objects, leaving the rooms beyond in restful shadow. A quiet voice offers welcome. Instead of continuing along the narrow street, we cross the threshold. For one last moment, we can hear the faint movement of water in the drain outside, along with the crickets and the soft touch of sandals upon dust. Then the door closes behind us. The uneven lane, the plain outer walls, and the broad darkness remain outside. Ahead lies the inward-facing world of an Athenian home, gathered gently around the open space of its courtyard. Chapter 5. Inside an Athenian courtyard. The courtyard is not large. 4 or 5 unhurried steps might carry a person across it, though baskets, jars, and a low wooden stool make the path curve gently, rather than run straight. Above, the open center frames a small square of fading sky. Its blue has deepened, and the first faint stars are appearing between the uneven roof lines. Within the outer walls, the air feels sheltered. The doorway to the street has closed, softening the sounds beyond it. A passing footstep can still be heard. Somewhere farther away, a dog gives a single low call, yet the house gathers its own quieter sounds around the courtyard. A chest closes, a pitcher is carefully set down, fabric stirs in the evening air. Many houses in ancient Athens were modest places like this one. Excavation has revealed buildings that were often irregular in shape, fitted into crowded neighborhoods and altered over time. Their walls did not always meet at perfect angles, and their rooms varied in size. A partition might be added, a doorway repaired, or the use of a space changed as the needs of the household changed. The lower portion of a wall could be built from stone, forming a firm foundation or a low stone base. Above it, builders commonly raised walls of mud brick. Plaster protected and smoothed the surfaces, while timber supported the roof. Terracotta tiles made from fired clay helped keep out the weather. Like every part of the house, these materials required care. Plaster could crack, timber could shift, mud brick could wear away, tiles could loosen or break. A home was not simply completed and left unchanged. It was repaired, adjusted, and tended through the years. The courtyard helped this inward-facing building breathe. Light entered from above and reached the doors of the surrounding rooms. Fresh air moved through the center. Smoke and cooking smells could rise toward the open sky. People crossed the courtyard as they passed from one room to another, yet it was more than a passageway. In daylight, it might support many kinds of household work. Food could be prepared here. Stores could be sorted, vessels washed, wool handled, and tools repaired. At another hour, objects might be moved aside to make room for a different task. The courtyard provided light, air, circulation, and a measure of privacy from the street. There is no decorative fountain here, and no carefully planted garden. Such features should not be imagined in every ordinary Athenian courtyard. This is a plain and useful space, shaped by the work of each day. Near one wall stands a broad storage jar. Its curved clay surface catches the lamplight unevenly. Large jars might hold grain, dried legumes, oil, wine, or other household supplies. Nearby there could also be amphoras, the tall two-handled vessels used to transport and store goods. Once emptied, a sound container might be used again. Useful objects were often kept, moved, and reused. Beside the jar rests a woven basket. Most of its contents are hidden, though a fold of wool rises above the rim. Baskets and textiles rarely survive as well as pottery. Plant fibers and woven cloth decay, while fired clay can remain in the earth for centuries. The objects recovered by archaeologists therefore offer only a partial view of household life. Much that was once familiar has disappeared. A small stool stands close to the lamp. It is light enough to be lifted and carried into another room. Much of the furniture in an Athenian house could be moved in this way. A household might possess stools, benches, chests, small tables, beds or couches, and woven containers. The furnishings could be comparatively sparse, but their portability allowed the rooms to remain flexible. A table might be brought out for a meal and moved afterward. A stool could follow whoever needed it. Bedding could be arranged at night and put aside again. A chest might hold clothing, tools, or valued household objects. Because furniture and equipment could be shifted, rooms did not necessarily have one permanent purpose. One doorway opens onto a dim chamber, where a low couch rests against the wall. Another leads to a room containing jars, a basin, and several cooking pots. It would be tempting to assign a fixed name and function to every space. Yet archaeologists often cannot determine exactly how each excavated room was used, from one hour, season, or generation to the next. A cooking pot shows that food was prepared somewhere within the household, but it doesn't always reveal where every meal was cooked. Fixed kitchens were not universal. Cooking might take place at a hearth, over a brazier holding warm coals, or upon a portable stand. Equipment could be moved according to the weather, the smoke, the available space, and the other work of the day. A room used for food preparation at one time might support a different task later. Some larger and wealthier houses included a formal dining room called an andron. Such a room could be arranged for male drinking parties, with couches placed around the walls. But an andron did not belong in every modest home. This household need not have one. Its meals and conversations can unfold around simpler furniture, in spaces that change with the hour. Near a doorway hangs a length of woven cloth. In the moving light, its threads reveal a quiet pattern. Textile production formed an important part of household work. Wool was prepared, spun into thread, and woven into fabric. Clothing required mending, and finished textiles needed careful storage. Women were strongly associated with textile work and with the management of household stores. Ancient literary sources often describe a contrast between the public lives of men and the domestic responsibilities of women. The houses themselves, however, do not support a simple, universal division into permanent men's and women's quarters. People and objects moved through the rooms. Work changed with season and circumstance. Women were not literally confined indoors at all times, and household life was more flexible than a neat architectural plan might suggest. Several kinds of people could share the rooms around the courtyard. There might be family members, dependents, visitors, enslaved people, and workers connected with a household craft. Their duties, standing, and freedom were not equal. Enslaved labor formed part of Athenian society within homes as well as beyond them. Yet the surviving walls and objects rarely tell us exactly who occupied a room or whose hands held a particular vessel. A loom weight found on a floor cannot by itself identify the status of the person who worked there. One fine cup does not prove that an entire household was wealthy. A plain cooking pot cannot reveal the social position of everyone who used it. Objects were moved, repaired, inherited, exchanged, and reused, while archaeology preserves only scattered traces of its occupation. Near one wall, a shallow cup has been placed carefully upon a small ledge. It may have served an ordinary purpose. At certain times, perhaps it played a part in a household ritual. Domestic shrines were possible, and families could honor deities within the home, but the placement and appearance of such shrines varied. Not every niche was sacred, and not every offering left an unmistakable trace. For now, it is enough to notice the cup, the smooth plaster behind it, and the care with which it has been set aside. The lamp burns lower, olive oil feeds the small wick, and the flame illuminates only a limited circle. Beyond that circle, the doorways soften into shadow. Above, the courtyard's square of sky becomes darker and clearer. Some Athenian houses had upper stories, perhaps reached by a stair. Upper floors were not universal, however, and they often survived poorly. Here we need not imagine more than the ground floor rooms gathered around their open center. They already hold everything this evening requires. A pitcher is carried across the courtyard and placed beside a basin. From another room comes a low voice, followed by the gentle sound of a chest lid settling into place. The hanging textile is drawn away from the night air. The stool is shifted closer to the wall. These are small actions, repeated in different forms across the city. Storing, carrying, folding, arranging, checking, and preparing. The courtyard gathers them without ceremony. It offers light when the sun is high, air when the rooms feel close, and privacy from the street beyond. Though open to the sky, it remains the sheltered heart of the house. Now the last useful daylight has faded. Lamplight rests upon clay, timber, plaster, and cloth. The rooms are quiet, and the open square above has become a window onto the night. A bowl is brought from a shadowed doorway and placed upon a small table. Bread is set beside it. A pitcher follows, then several plain cups. Around the courtyard, the work of the household pauses. The ordinary evening meal begins. Chapter 6. The Evening Meal. The evening meal begins without ceremony. In this modest courtyard, a low table stands near the wall. Upon it rests a shallow bowl of lentils, still giving off a little warmth. Beside the bowl are bread, several olives, a piece of pale cheese, and a small pitcher of wine. Another pitcher holds water. The dishes are plain, made of fired clay, their surfaces familiar to the hands that lift and wash them each day. Athenians called their principal evening meal the deipnon. The word could describe meals of many kinds, from a simple household supper to a rich dinner offered by someone with considerable means. Here, however, it means something quiet and ordinary. It is nourishment at the close of the day, shared according to the customs and circumstances of the household. A hand reaches for the bread and tears it into a manageable piece. No fork waits beside the bowl, for forks are not ordinary table utensils in this place and time. Food may be lifted with the fingers, gathered with bread, or eaten with a spoon when the dish requires one. The bread is firm and slightly coarse. Cereals form the foundation of the diet, and barley is especially important. It can be ground and prepared in several ways, including simple cakes and other barley dishes. Wheat bread is also known and valued. but its availability and quality vary. Fine white wheat bread is not an everyday certainty in every home. Tonight's bread is enough. A piece is dipped into the lentils, where it absorbs the broth, and a little olive oil shining on the surface. The lentils have been cooked until tender, perhaps with onion, herbs, and a touch of garlic. Their scent is earthy and mild. Pulses such as lentils, chickpeas, and broad beans are sustaining foods. Dried, they can be kept for later. Cooked slowly, they become a warming dish that asks for no display of wealth. The olive oil has been poured sparingly. A narrow stream is enough to soften the bread, enrich the lentils, or dress a small serving of greens. Though olive oil is familiar and widely useful, it is not something every household pours without thought. The jar must last, and each meal draws a little more from it. Near the bowl, several olives rest on a small plate. Their skins are dark and gently wrinkled. The cheese beside them is likely made from the milk of sheep or goats. It is salty and firm, and only a modest portion has been brought out. Each person takes a little, pairing it with bread or an olive. There are figs as well, saved from an earlier season. Fresh fruit might appear when it is available, according to what is ripened and what the household can obtain. Greens and herbs may add color and flavor to a meal. Onions and garlic keep well and lend depth to simple dishes. The contents of an evening table change with the season, the market, the harvest, and the means of those who live in the house. No single menu can represent every Athenian home. One household may have wheat bread, while another depends more heavily on barley. One may serve cheese often, while another brings it out in smaller portions. Food that is ordinary to a prosperous home may be only occasional elsewhere. Tonight there is no meat, and its absence is unremarkable. For many people, meat is not a routine part of the daily meal. It is often connected with sacrifice and festivals, when portions may be shared among participants. Households with greater means can obtain it more often, but a peaceful, ordinary deipnon requires none. Fish also varies greatly in cost and availability. Fresh fish depends upon season, location, price, and the success of those supplying the market. Salted fish can be kept longer than a fresh catch. Small fish may sometimes be comparatively accessible, while large prized fish can command high prices and be associated with wealth. Perhaps on another evening, a few small salted fish will lend their strong flavor to the meal. Perhaps fresh fish will appear when the price is manageable. Tonight, the lentils are sufficient. The shared bowl passes slowly, and bread gathers the last traces of broth. The wine pitcher is lifted, but the wine need not be poured alone. Wine is commonly mixed with water, especially during formal social drinking. The strength of the mixture can vary. There is no single fixed proportion followed by every household or on every occasion. Here, a little wine is combined with water in a mixing vessel. The diluted drink is then poured into plain cups. Its fragrance is softened by the water. The cup is held for a moment, raised, and lowered again. There is no haste. The tableware is modest. There are bowls, plates, drinking cups, pitchers, a mixing vessel, and a shared serving dish. Some pieces may have darker surfaces, while others show the warm reddish color of the clay. A small chip marks the rim of one cup and has been worn smoother through continued use. Fine painted vessels exist, and prosperous hosts may own impressive sets. Yet much everyday tableware is practical and unpretentious. A plain cup performs its task well. Even without elaborate decoration, it carries the quiet skill of the hands that shaped it. Dining arrangements vary as much as the food and pottery. The familiar image of Greek men reclining on couches belongs particularly to the symposium, a formal gathering associated above all with prosperous men. A symposium could include drinking, conversation, music, and other social activities after a meal. It was not a universal nightly custom, and every Athenian supper should not be imagined as a banquet of reclining diners. In many homes, people may sit on stools, benches, or mats, or settle wherever the available space permits. They may eat at different times according to work, age, status, and household practice. The members of a household do not necessarily gather in the modern arrangement of an entire family sharing every evening meal at once. A single house can contain relatives, children, visitors, workers, and enslaved people, and their experiences may differ even beneath the same roof. Some may eat earlier or later. Some may serve before taking their own food. The exact arrangements are not always clear. The surviving literary accounts reveal much more about prosperous men than they do about poorer households, women, children, and enslaved people. Their ordinary evenings are less visible in the written record. For that reason, this meal is best understood as a gentle and plausible composite, not the description of one documented household on one certain night. Still, the plain objects around us suggest familiar gestures. A bowl is carried from a cooking space, bread is divided, a cup passes from one hand to another. These small movements need little ceremony, and the rhythm of the meal remains slow. Someone breaks off another piece of bread. Someone turns an olive stone between finger and thumb before placing it at the edge of a dish. A cup receives a little more watered wine, though it is not filled deeply. Another person drinks water. A few words pass across the low table. There is mention of a repaired sandal, some wool, and an errand that must be completed in the morning. The day's larger concerns remain beyond the walls. Here, conversation follows the scale of the household. Is more barley needed? How much oil remains in the jar? What work should begin first when daylight returns? One voice answers, another pauses. For a while, only the quiet sounds of eating remain. The lentils cool as the level in the bowl sinks. A final piece of bread moves slowly across the clay, collecting what remains. The meal has not been elaborate, yet it has been steady and sufficient. Grain, pulses, oil, olives, cheese, and figs have brought the working day to its close. The last figs are left for another time. The cheese is covered and carried back towards storage. The remaining bread is protected for later. Olive stones collect at one side of a dish. The cups and bowls are gathered, and a little water loosens the traces of food that cling to the clay. Above the courtyard, the sky has deepened to an even darkness. The roofline is now easier to see than the plaster below it. Conversation grows softer as the meal ends. A cup is set down, making a small, rounded sound against the table. The pitchers are moved away. The shared bowl is lifted. One stool shifts lightly across the floor, then becomes still. Now the household turns toward the quieter tasks that belong to evening. Cloth may be folded, a worn edge may be mended, jars and shutters may be checked, and a few simple preparations made for morning. One small olive oil lamp is brought nearer. Its flame rests at the end of the wick, steady and golden. As the last color leaves the open sky, this modest light becomes more important than the fading evening above. It falls across the cleared table and the covered bread. It touches the rim of a cup, the wall beyond it, and the quiet hands returning to their work. Guided by that small flame, the household moves gently onward into the calmer hours of night. Chapter 7. Lamps, Looms, and Household Stories. The lamp is placed upon a low stand near the courtyard wall, where its light can reach the hands gathered closest to it. Made of terracotta, the same fired clay used for cups, bowls, and storage vessels, it is small enough to be carried from one part of the house to another. Its body holds a shallow reservoir of oil. At one side, the clay narrows into a pinched edge, almost a nozzle, where a fibrous wick rests and draws fuel toward the flame. Olive oil burns within it tonight, though other oils might also be used. The flame is modest, no larger than it needs to be. With the wick carefully tended, it gives a steady light, accompanied by only the faintest trace of scent or smoke. This single lamp does not illuminate the entire courtyard. It creates a small island of gold. Within that island, the grain of a wooden stool becomes visible, along with the curved rim of a cup and the soft folds of cloth resting across a pair of knees. Beyond the light, the paving stones fade into gray. A doorway appears only as a dark rectangle. The upper walls merge gradually with the night sky, and the corners of the house seem farther away than they did in daylight. Artificial light requires fuel, and fuel must be used with care. A household with ample resources might light several lamps when needed. A poorer household would be more likely to ration its supply. One flame might be carried from place to place. Work could be brought toward the lamp, rather than lamps being scattered through every room, and so the remaining tasks gather within this circle of light. A bundle of wool rests in a basket nearby. Long before wool can become a cloak, a blanket, or a simple length of cloth, it must be cleaned and prepared. Dirt and pieces of plant matter are removed. The fibers are loosened and arranged so that they can be drawn out more evenly. Much of this preparation is easier in daylight, when small irregularities can be seen clearly. Yet some prepared wool remains ready for spinning, and spinning can continue near the lamp. A hand draws out a narrow stream of fiber, another hand turns the spindle. The spindle whorl helps the spindle rotate steadily. As it turns, the loose fibers twist together and become thread. The newly made thread is wound around the spindle shaft. Then the movement begins again, wool through the fingers, the spindle turning, thread gathering slowly around the wood. It is patient work, formed from repeated gestures rather than sudden effort. The fingers learn how much wool to release and how firmly to draw it. Too much fiber at once makes the thread uneven, too little may leave it weak. Experience rests in the quiet balance between the two. Nearby, another piece of cloth is inspected along a worn edge. Mending requires less space than weaving, and when the damage is simple, less light. A needle passes through and then returns. The thread is pulled snugly, but not so tightly that the fabric gathers. A small tear closes, one stitch at a time. Textile work was central to household production in classical Athens. The making and care of cloth required many stages. Wool had to be prepared, fiber had to be spun into thread, the loom had to be arranged, and the cloth woven. Garments and other textiles then needed to be folded, stored, and repaired. Much of this work was performed by women, though the people involved could occupy very different positions within the household. Free women might work beside enslaved women, while younger members learned through watching, helping, and repetition. The household was not a simple or equal place, even when its evening sounds were subdued. Against one wall stands a warp-weighted loom. It is a substantial wooden frame, tall enough for long threads to hang vertically from its upper beam. These vertical threads form the warp. At their lower ends, hanging loom weights keep them taut, providing the firm arrangement needed for weaving. During brighter hours, someone may stand before the loom, guiding the crosswise thread through the warp, and pressing each new row into place. The work requires judgment as well as rhythm. Threads must be watched, edges must remain even. Any pattern must be remembered and maintained. But the loom is quiet now. It is too large to be folded and carried away every evening, as though it were a basket or a stool. It remains where it has been set up, its nearest threads pale in the lamplight, and the rest fading into darkness. Weaving can require more light than spinning or simple mending, especially when the threads are fine or the arrangement is intricate. As darkness deepens, the household turns towards smaller tasks suited to the lamp's limited glow. The loom waits for morning. Archaeologists sometimes find loom weights in the rooms and courtyards of ancient houses. These objects show that weaving took place there, but they do not reveal exactly how every room was used. Loom weights found in one space do not prove that the room was permanently reserved as a women's quarter. Household arrangements could shift according to task and need, and one room might serve several purposes. Tonight, too, the courtyard has changed gently from one use to another. It has held daylight and work, food preparation and the evening meal. Now it holds a lamp, a basket, folded cloth, and a few quiet voices. A child watches the spindle turn for a time, following the thread as it forms. Learning within the household often happens in this way, through participation, imitation, informal instruction, and many small repetitions. A younger hand may be given an uncomplicated task, such as sorting fibers, carrying an empty cup, or folding a narrow piece of cloth. Skills are acquired gradually, woven into the ordinary movement of daily life. Some boys in Athens also received education outside the household, depending on family means and expectations. Yet such lessons were only one kind of education. Children also learned by observing how familiar tasks were done, and by joining in when they were able. Near the lamp, there may be a little conversation. We do not know enough about classical Athenian bedtime customs to reconstruct one standard routine. Households differed in wealth, size, composition, and habit. No single scene can represent them all. Still, quiet talk is plausible. Someone may recall news from a neighboring household. Someone may mention a vessel to be collected, a supply to be checked, or an errand for tomorrow. A familiar story might be repeated, not as a formal performance, but because remembered words can accompany repetitive work. A child may listen for only part of it before attention drifts toward the flame and the long shadow of the spindle upon the wall. The conversation rises no higher than necessary. Between a few sentences comes the soft pull of thread. The mended cloth is examined once more and then folded. A garment intended for mourning is placed where it can be found without searching in darkness. A vessel is arranged for the household's first tasks after waking. These are small preparations, but they make the beginning of another day a little smoother. The wool is returned to its basket. Loose fibers are gathered from the floor. The spindle, now wound with its new length of thread, is laid where it will not roll away. Nothing is hurried. As the flame consumes the oil, a hand reaches toward the nozzle and adjusts the wick with care. For a moment, the flame narrows. Then it settles again, smaller than before, its golden edge reflected in the nearest cup. The room beyond the courtyard is almost entirely dark now. The loom has become a pattern of vertical shadows. Voices thin into pauses, and the pauses gradually lengthen. Beyond the courtyard wall, Athens has grown stiller. The lamp here is only one among many scattered points of light. Some remain behind closed doors, others glow near entrances. A few burn farther away, beside public buildings and covered walks. Beyond the narrow streets, near the Agora, several small lights remain where the daytime crowds have gone. Here, the wick is adjusted once more, the flame steadies. Wool rests in its basket, thread rests around the spindle. Shadows gather at the edge of the room, and the household becomes quiet. Chapter 8. Returning to the Agora. Beyond the courtyard wall, the narrow streets lead gradually toward a more open part of Athens. There is no sudden change. Houses continue for a time, their plain outer walls interrupted by closed doors and an occasional high window. A little lamplight escapes through a gap in a shutter. Somewhere behind another wall, a vessel is placed carefully upon a shelf. The faint sound reaches the street and then is gone. The way bends and descends slightly. Buildings begin to stand farther apart, and above their roofs, a wider portion of the evening sky becomes visible. Deep blue is shading slowly into darkness. Ahead lies the Agora. The word Agora means a gathering place, or a place of assembly. In Athens, it also describes the broad civic and commercial heart of the city, where many parts of public life meet. During the day, people come here for trade, government business, legal matters, worship, conversation, and news. Officials work in buildings along its edges. Laws and public records belong to its civic world. Religious monuments rise beside meeting places, while workshops and houses occupy the surrounding ground. Yet the Agora is not a single neatly paved rectangle. Its open spaces follow the land. Roads cross it at different angles, and buildings raised at different times stand along its margins. Some areas are worn hard by feet and wheels. Others gather dust. Stoas, monuments, altars, trees, and boundary stones shape the space without enclosing it completely. At this hour, its openness is the first thing one notices. The close walls of the residential streets fall behind. Daytime voices have faded, leaving room for smaller sounds. A sandal brushes dry earth. A wooden door shifts on its fittings. Air moves beneath a roofed walk. In this wider space, each noise travels a little farther before dissolving. No single bell has announced that trade is finished. Instead, the market has diminished piece by piece. One seller has lifted a basket and departed. Another has folded cloth around the day's remaining goods. A cart has rolled away along one of the broad routes. Temporary tables have been carried off, and tools or equipment worth keeping have been taken home or secured. Not every merchant in Athens has a permanent shop. Much commerce takes place from carts, baskets, simple stalls, temporary tables, or open-air positions occupied only for the day. Once these are removed, the ground does not resemble a fully furnished market abandoned all at once. It becomes spacious again, holding only faint reminders of what has passed across it. Beside the path lies a crushed leaf, darkened where many feet pressed it into the dust. A few pale fibers cling together near a stone. Elsewhere there may be the powdery trace of grain, a broken nutshell, or the small glint of a fish scale. These remnants are sparse and easily overlooked. Valuable goods and equipment are gone, and civic weights and measures have not been left casually scattered on the ground. The marketplace remains mostly as a memory of movement. In daylight, sellers name what they carry. Customers pause before produce, pottery, cloth, and tools. Friends meet and remain to talk. Officials and attendants pass between public buildings. Visitors arrive from nearby districts and from the countryside beyond the city walls. The Agora gathers all these separate purposes into one broad and changing rhythm. Now the way ahead is nearly clear. The Panathenaic Way crosses the Agora on a broad diagonal, continuing toward the Acropolis. On important festival days, processions travel along this route and move uphill. Tonight it is simply a pale band beneath the darkening sky. Its surface holds wheel marks and the soft impressions of many sandals. Even when almost no one is using it, the road seems to preserve the direction of countless journeys. Looking upward along its course, the Acropolis rises beyond the lower city. The rock is darker now, and the buildings above have lost the brightness of afternoon. Their edges remain visible against the sky, still and distant above the quiet market ground. Along the Agora stand several stoas. A stoa is a long roofed colonnade offering shade, shelter, and a covered place to walk. It may also provide room for meetings, conversation, waiting, or business. During the day, many voices can gather beneath such a roof. In the evening, the columns divide the darkness into calm, repeating intervals. A solitary figure passes beneath one of the colonnades. The footsteps are unhurried. Each produces a low echo beneath the roof, followed by a silence of equal length. The figure passes beyond the reach of a small lamp and becomes a darker shape among the columns. Soon the footsteps fade, leaving only the soft movement of air. On the north side stands the painted stoa, the Stoa Poikile, known for the paintings displayed within it. Their details cannot be seen clearly now. Colors visible by day have withdrawn into shadow, leaving only broad, indistinct forms beneath the sheltering roof. The paintings remain in their places, waiting quietly for daylight. Elsewhere, a public inscription appears where lamplight touches the face of a stone. A few letters become visible, their sharply cut grooves holding narrow lines of darkness. Beyond that small circle of light, the rest of the text disappears. Boundary stones stand at the edges of the civic space. By day, their words can be read and their purpose understood. At night, they seem like patient markers, settled firmly into the earth. On the western side of the Agora, the Stoa of Zeus Eleutherios extends beneath the slope. Its colonnade rests mostly in shadow. Nearby, the smaller Stoa Basileos is associated with the Archon Basileus and with legal and religious duties. These covered places busy with movement and conversation during the day are quiet now. Their roofs shelter little more than darkness and cooling air. Above them, on higher ground, stands the temple of Hephaestos and Athena. Its position gives it a clear view across the Agora in daylight. Tonight, its columns catch the faint remaining brightness of the sky. Below, workshops have fallen silent, fires have cooled, and tools rest where careful hands place them. The temple remains upon its rise, overlooking dark roofs, empty paths, and open ground. Farther south, South Stoa 1 forms a long boundary along the edge of the Agora. Its covered space belongs to the ordinary patterns of public life, to movement, waiting, meeting, and business. Yet there is no need to pass beneath every colonnade or to name every structure. Tonight, the Agora is better understood through its spaces. There are sheltered walks, stretches of open earth, paths between stone buildings, and a generous sky above them all. The air moves freely here. It carries traces of the day, dust, olive oil, old smoke, play at stems and stones slowly releasing its warmth. No scent remains for long. Each arrives faintly, lingers for a breath or two, and thins into the cooler night. Near the western public buildings, the Bouleuterion rests in darkness. This is the meeting place of the council. During the day, it belongs to the administrative work of the city, to discussion, decisions, and the ordering of public affairs. For now, the meeting place is still. Its walls hold no speaking voices. The shadows within remain undisturbed. The open ground continues to cool. Dust settles into wheel marks. A column turns pale when a passing lamp briefly reaches it, then returns to darkness. Two sets of footsteps cross the Panathenaic Way and disappear into a side street, carrying their measured rhythm toward the clustered houses. Near the Agora's western side stands another civic building, smaller than the long stoas and different in shape. This is the Tholos. Its outline is round, and the curve of its wall can be followed even in the dim light. The Tholos serves as the headquarters and dining place of the Prytanes, members of the council who take their turn attending to the city's continuing civic responsibilities. Its presence gives the quiet scene a gentle sense of watchfulness. The tables and baskets of the market may be gone, and most public conversation may have ended. But Athens does not become entirely still at sunset. A small light burns near the round building. It does not illuminate the whole tholos. It reaches only a doorway, a patch of earth, and the lower curve of the wall. Beyond it, the agora opens beneath the night sky. The Panathenaic way lies pale and quiet. The stoas hold their ordered shadows. Public stones stand at the edge of sight, and the Acropolis remains a dark form above the city. The agora is mostly empty now, but not entirely. Another faint footstep sounds near the tholos. Perhaps someone crosses a room within, or passes behind the doorway where the lamp is burning. The sound is brief and unhurried. Then silence returns to the broad civic space. That modest flame suggests something enduring. Even when household lamps are lowered, when workshops are closed, and when the places of trade lie open beneath the stars, the city keeps a few people awake. Chapter 9. Guardians, Travelers, and Late Footsteps. The small light beside the tholos remains steady in the darkness. Its flame leans when the evening air passes through the doorway, then rises again above the olive oil. Within the round building, the work of Athens continues in a quieter form. The men serving here are known as the prytanais. They are drawn from the Council of 500 and serve, 50 at a time, as the city's rotating executive committee. Their period of duty is limited. In time, another group will take their place, and the responsibility will continue its measured passage through the civic year. The tholos is both their headquarters and their dining place. Here the prytanais eat at public expense while attending to public business. Ordinary nourishment and official responsibility share the same roof. Bread is divided, cups are lifted and set down, messages are received, arrangements considered, and the necessary work of the city carried from one day into the next. By the later 4th century BCE, 17 of the prytanais, about 1/3 of the group, together with the daily chairman, spent the night in the tholos. Their presence ensured that officials would remain available after sunset. If a message came late, or some need arose before morning, there would be someone nearby to receive it. Yet this does not make the building lively. At this hour voices are low. A cup rests where the evening meal has ended. A bench gives a faint creak as someone shifts beneath his cloak. One man may already be resting, while another remains close to the entrance, listening to the sounds beyond the curved wall. The chairman's responsibility belongs to this particular day. Soon another man will hold it. For tonight, however, he remains near the city's concerns, beneath a roof that is both public and strangely domestic, a place of meals, waiting, duty, and rest. Outside, the agora is nearly still. Nearly, but not entirely. Athens does not move according to a single rhythm. Sunset does not end every obligation at once. While most household doors have closed and most market goods have been carried away, a few people are still awake. Their tasks are scattered across the city, joined by little more than dim lamps, familiar paths, and the soft sound of footsteps. A messenger crosses the open ground at an even pace. Perhaps he has come from another part of Athens with a report to deliver. Perhaps the message is routine, but best placed in official hands before morning. It may be carried in writing, or held carefully in memory, ready to be spoken exactly as it was given. He passes through the deeper shadow of a public building and approaches the lamp at the tholos. The light does not reach far enough to reveal his face until he is near the doorway. There, a quiet exchange follows, a greeting, a name, a few necessary words. No alarm disturbs the agora, and the stillness remains. Soon the messenger turns away. His sandals brush the packed earth as he retraces his path. The flame stays behind him, illuminating the threshold and the lower curve of the wall. With every step he becomes less distinct, until the darkness of a side street receives him. Elsewhere another late walker carries a covered lamp. Only a narrow line of brightness escapes around its edge. The small flame reveals the uneven ground immediately ahead, then leaves it behind again. The streets of Athens are not filled with public light. Anyone moving after dark depends on familiarity, moonlight when it is available, the glow from an open doorway, or a portable lamp. The city known by day becomes a quieter arrangement of walls, corners, thresholds, and remembered turns. Some people abroad at this hour are returning from meals or meetings. Their voices can be heard briefly at the end of a lane. As they approach their homes, Conversation softens. A wooden door opens, allowing amber light to fall across the ground. Those within offer a few words of welcome. Then the returning figures pass inside, the door closes, and the street grows dim once more. Other footsteps belong to attendants, accompanying household members, or completing errands of their own. A cloak is carried. A lamp is held low. A needed object is brought home before the household settles completely. These movements are small, but they continue the work of the evening. A traveler may also be seeking a place to rest. If he is unfamiliar with Athens, every turning appears more uncertain after sunset. He pauses where one street meets another and listens for someone who can direct him. Perhaps he is looking for a household whose name he has been given, or for a place where he may stay until morning. His journey has left dust on his clothing. A bag hangs from one shoulder. An attendant may walk beside him, helping to carry what remains of the traveler's belongings. When directions are finally offered, they depend on visible and familiar places: a broad way, a turning near a recognizable building, then a narrower passage leading toward the proper door. The explanation is repeated to make it clear. The traveler thanks the speaker, adjusts his cloak, and continues. His lamp moves slowly along the wall, a little pool of light drifting through the darkness. Near a workshop, the air still holds a trace of warmth. The artisan has ended most of the day's labor, yet some tasks cannot be left unfinished merely because night has come. Heat may need to be monitored. Valuable materials and completed goods may need to be checked and stored. The door must be secured before the workshop can be abandoned to the dark. Inside, someone crouches beside a fading glow. He does not stir the heat into a bright fire. He only watches, waiting until it has diminished enough for the night. A covering is adjusted. Tools are placed in order. Stock is moved away from the entrance, where it will remain until morning. The person finishing this work might be the artisan who directs the workshop. It might be a family member, an attendant, or an enslaved worker carrying out an assigned duty. In Athens, many forms of domestic and commercial labor are performed by enslaved people. Their circumstances differ, but they do not possess the freedom to choose their lives as free citizens do. Their work remains present throughout the quiet city, even when individual names and experiences have not survived. Within a household, an enslaved attendant may still be clearing cups, fetching water, preparing a lamp, arranging bedding, or securing the courtyard door. In a commercial space, another worker may carry goods into storage or remain near valuable stock. The ordered room and the prepared morning fire are signs of labor, though the person responsible may remain almost invisible in the surviving record. To notice the finished task is also to notice the hands that completed it. Free members of a household may be awake as well. Someone finishes a repair that will be needed the next day. Another checks the doorway before retiring. A child who has not yet fallen asleep is gently reminded to settle beneath a covering. Household life does not pass suddenly from activity into silence. It fades by degrees as one duty after another is completed. At the edges of the city, vigilance may take a different form. Gate and defensive personnel can remain watchful when circumstances require it. On a peaceful night, such duty may consist mostly of waiting, listening, and observing the people who approach. A late arrival comes along the road. Before the traveler is clearly visible, there is the sound of measured steps and the faint creak of something being carried. Calm questions may follow. The person gives an account of where he is going and whom he intends to meet. After a brief exchange, he is allowed to continue into the city. The footsteps pass onward and slowly diminish among the streets. For long stretches, nothing else happens. Those keeping watch hear only the night air, the movement of insects, and perhaps a dog calling from somewhere beyond sight. Their attention remains steady, though the darkness offers little to observe. Back toward the center, the messenger has vanished into a narrow lane. The traveler has found the correct doorway. The artisan has covered the last warmth and placed the workshop in order. Household attendants complete their final duties, and one lamp after another is lowered. At the tholos, the officials remain available. Some rest, while others maintain the modest routines of their service. The flame near the entrance has consumed a little more oil, and a dark thread has formed along the wick. No broad avenue of light surrounds it. Athens after dark is shaped mostly by shadow. with brightness gathered into small and useful circles. Within those circles, a few hands finish their work. A few voices exchange necessary words. A few footsteps cross the cooling earth. Then each sound recedes. The agora receives the silence again, while the lamp beside the tholos continues to burn.